can you truly know the person sleeping next to you? Imagine giving your heart completely, building a family, sharing your dreams, only for their hidden double life to expose a betrayal that shatters not just trust, but your entire future. This isn't just about secrets. It's about the devastating aftermath when forever becomes a lie. What you're about to hear is based on a true story that unfolded during what was supposed to be the most joyful time of year. The names have been changed, but the pain, the shock, the unraveling of everything once believed to be sacred, that's all real. Sarah Mitchell had always loved Christmas. The twinkling lights, the smell of pine needles mixed with cinnamon, the laughter of her 3 children as they decorated cookies in her kitchen. For 15 years, Christmas had meant family, togetherness, love. Her husband Michael was the center of it all, the man who brought home the tree every year, who kissed her under the mistletoe with a tenderness that made her feel like a newlywed. But on December 24th, 2018, Sarah would discover that the man she'd built her entire life around was a stranger. And that discovery would turn her Christmas into a nightmare she could never have imagined. It started with something small, something so ordinary that most people would have missed it. Michael had been working late more often that fall, coming home exhausted, distracted, sometimes smelling faintly of a perfume Sarah didn't recognize. She'd asked about it once, casually, and he'd laughed it off. "Must be someone at the office," he'd said. Sarah had nodded, pushed down that tiny flutter of unease, told herself she was being paranoid. Michael loved her. They had 3 beautiful children together, 12-year-old Emma, 9-year-old Jake, and 6-year-old Lily. They had a mortgage, school plays, soccer games. This was real. This was forever. But that December, Michael seemed different, more distant. He was on his phone constantly, texting, smiling at the screen in a way that made Sarah's stomach twist. When she'd walk into a room, he'd quickly lock his phone and turn to her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just work stuff," he'd say. Sarah wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. So she threw herself into Christmas preparations, baking cookies, wrapping presents, planning the perfect Christmas Eve dinner. If she could just make everything perfect, maybe whatever was pulling Michael away would disappear. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow covering their neighborhood. Sarah had spent all day preparing dinner, roasting turkey, mashing potatoes, making Michael's favorite pecan pie. The children were buzzing with excitement in their matching pajamas. Michael had promised to be home by 6 o'clock. 6 came and went. Then 7. Sarah called his cell phone 3 times. No answer. By 8 o'clock, the children's excitement had turned to disappointment. "Where's Daddy?" Lily asked, her lip trembling. Sarah forced a smile. "He's just running late, sweetheart." But Sarah knew. Deep in her gut, she knew this wasn't about traffic. At 9 o'clock, after putting the children to bed, Sarah did something she'd never done before. She went into Michael's home office, the room he always kept locked, and used the spare key she'd found months ago, but never dared to use. Her hands trembled as she turned the lock. The office was neat, organized, exactly what you'd expect. But Sarah found what she feared in the bottom drawer of his desk, hidden beneath old tax returns. A second phone, a phone she'd never seen before. When she pressed the power button, it lit up with hundreds of messages, photos, a whole digital life she knew nothing about. Sarah's legs gave out. She sank to the floor and began to scroll. The messages went back years. 3 years. The photos showed Michael with another woman, beautiful with dark hair and a bright smile. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the other photos. Photos of Michael with 2 small children who looked like him. Children who called him Daddy. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Sarah sat on that floor, scrolling through years of deception. The woman's name was Jennifer. The children were Tyler and Madison, ages 4 and 6, which meant Michael had been with Jennifer for at least 5 years. 5 years of splitting his time between 2 families. 5 years of lies, so carefully constructed that neither woman had ever suspected. Michael had told Jennifer he was a traveling consultant, on the road 3 or 4 days a week. He told Sarah he was working late, attending conferences. The truth was he'd been living 2 completely separate lives, maintaining 2 households, 2 sets of children, 2 women who both believed he was theirs alone. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Car trouble. Be home soon. Love you." Those words that once made her heart flutter now felt like poison. How could he say he loved her when he'd fathered children with another woman while tucking their own children into bed? At 11 o'clock, Sarah heard the front door open. Michael appeared in the office doorway, still in his coat, a grocery bag in hand. He saw her face, saw the phone on the floor, and the color drained from him. The grandfather clock ticked. Outside, church bells chimed midnight. Christmas Day had arrived. "Sarah," Michael whispered. "I can explain." But he couldn't. "How long?" Sarah's voice was flat dead. Michael closed his eyes. 5 years. Sarah laughed, a horrible, broken sound. 5 years. You've been doing this our entire marriage. Michael moved toward her, but Sarah held up her hand. Don't. Do they know about us? Does Jennifer know about me and our children? His silence was the answer. Neither family had known about the other. Why? Sarah whispered. If you wanted to be with her, why didn't you leave? Michael's eyes filled with tears. Because I love you. I love our children. But I love them too. I couldn't choose. Sarah felt something crack open inside her, a chasm of pain so deep it might swallow her whole. You didn't want to lose anyone, so you destroyed everyone. Emma is 12. She worships you. Jake looks up to you like you're a hero. Lily thinks you hung the moon. And tomorrow, Christmas morning, I have to tell them their father has been lying their entire lives. Her voice broke. How am I supposed to explain that half the time you weren't at work? You were with other children? Sarah picked up the phone and held it out. Call Jennifer. Right now. Tell her the truth. Tell her you have a wife and 3 other children. Michael's face went white. I can't. It would destroy them. What do you think this is doing to us? Sarah threw the phone at his feet. Call her now, or I will. With shaking hands, Michael dialed. Sarah watched as Jennifer's life imploded just as hers had. She could hear Jennifer's confusion turn to screaming rage. Could hear children crying in the background. It was Christmas morning. Both families should have been opening presents. Instead, 2 worlds were ending. When Michael hung up, his face was wet with tears. She hates me. Good, Sarah said coldly. That makes 2 of us. She walked to the door. I want you out by morning. You're not going to be here when our children wake up. I'll tell them you had a work emergency. I'll give them one more day of thinking their father is a good man before I break their hearts. Michael left at 2 in the morning. Sarah watched him load his car and drive away. Then she went upstairs, pushed open her children's doors, watched them sleeping peacefully, still believing in Santa Claus, still believing their family was safe. Tomorrow she would destroy that belief. Christmas morning, Sarah told her children the truth. She watched Emma's face crumble, watched Jake throw his presents against the wall screaming he hated his father, held Lily as she sobbed, asking why Daddy didn't want them anymore. The days after were a blur. Lawyers, emptied bank accounts, changed locks. But the worst part wasn't the logistics. It was watching her children change. Emma became withdrawn, stopped eating. Jake started fights at school. Lily had nightmares every night. 6 months later, Jennifer called. The conversation was awkward but necessary. I didn't know, Jennifer said through tears. I swear I didn't know about you. I know, Sarah said quietly. He lied to both of us. Jennifer wasn't her enemy. They were both victims of the same deception. 2 women who'd given their hearts to someone who didn't deserve them. 2 sets of children growing up without a father because he couldn't be honest. The divorce was finalized 11 months after that Christmas Eve. Michael lost custody of all 5 children. Emma refused to see him. Jake sat with him in stony silence. Only Lily still asked for her daddy. It would be years before Sarah could enter a Christmas store without feeling sick, years before she could trust another person. Her children went to therapy every week. Emma was diagnosed with depression. Jake struggled with anger. Lily developed severe separation anxiety. But slowly, painfully, they began to heal. Sarah threw herself into being both mother and father. She coached soccer, helped with college applications, read bedtime stories, promised over and over she would never leave. She built a life that was different from what she'd planned but was honest, real, not built on lies. 2 years after the divorce, Sarah met David, a kind man who knew her story, who was patient with her children's wariness. She didn't fall in love quickly. She took her time, made sure this was real. And on Christmas Eve, 4 years after the worst night of her life, Sarah watched her children decorate the tree with David, watched them laugh, watched them slowly learn to trust again. She thought about Michael, living alone in a small apartment, having lost everything. And she realized something. She'd thought that night destroyed Christmas forever. But she'd been wrong. Christmas wasn't about one night or one person. It was about family, love, choosing every day to show up for the people who matter. And she'd done that. She'd rebuilt their lives from the ashes. She taught her children they deserved honesty and real love. Did Sarah ever forgive Michael? She forgave him for her own peace, so she could move forward without hatred crushing her. But she never forgot. She made sure her children understood that love doesn't lie, that real commitment means showing up every day. Michael tried reaching out over the years. Emma never responded. Jake agreed to see him once yearly, more from curiosity than love. Lily grew up with only fragmented memories of the man who left on Christmas Eve. All 5 children had to work through the same pain, the same questions about whether they were lovable, whether they could trust anyone. But here's what Sarah learned. Betrayal doesn't just destroy trust in one person. It destroys trust in yourself. It makes you question your judgment, your instincts. For months, Sarah would lie awake replaying every memory, trying to find the signs she'd missed. Had she been blind, or had he just been that good at lying? The answer was both. And that was her lesson. Not to become cynical, but to trust her instincts when something feels wrong. 8 years later, Sarah sits in her living room watching the Christmas lights twinkle, and she can finally do it without that crushing weight. Her children have survived and grown. Emma is in grad school, studying psychology, wanting to help traumatized children. Jake is in college playing soccer. Lily is 14, still dealing with anxiety, but getting better every day. They've learned that family isn't about biology or legal ties. Family is about showing up, being honest, doing the hard work of loving people even when it's difficult. Michael taught them what not to be. Sarah taught them what to be. Strong, resilient, honest, whole. If you'd been in Sarah's position, what would you have done? Would you have confronted Michael that night? Would you have tried to work it out for the children? These are questions none of us want to face. We all want to trust our partners. But Sarah's story reminds us that sometimes forever is a lie. And when we discover that lie, we can let it destroy us, or we can rebuild something stronger, something real. Sarah chose to rebuild. The lesson isn't about Michael's cruelty or even Sarah's strength. It's about what happens when we build our lives on lies, when we choose comfort over truth. Michael thought he could keep both families forever, but he traded everything real for the illusion of having it all. He was left with nothing but regret and children who would remember the grandfather who chose lies over love. Sarah's legacy is different. She's the woman who found out her life was a lie on Christmas Eve and still made Christmas morning bearable for her children. She's the mother who worked 3 jobs, never spoke badly about Michael in front of the kids, who rebuilt not just her life, but her children's faith in the world. She proved you can survive the unsurvivable, that you can be betrayed and still learn to trust again, that you can have your heart shattered and still be capable of love. That's the real Christmas miracle. Not the perfect family photo, but the quiet courage to keep going when everything falls apart. What would you have done in Sarah's place? How would you have told your children? Would you have forgiven Michael? These aren't easy questions with right answers, but they're worth asking because Sarah's story could be any of our stories. That person you trust completely could be harboring secrets you can't imagine. Not because you're foolish, but because we want to believe in the people we love. But sometimes they're not who they say they are. And when we discover that, we choose. Do we let it destroy us? Or do we survive? Sarah chose to survive. And if you ever face a betrayal so profound it threatens everything you know, remember her story. Remember she made it through. Remember that 8 years later, she's watching her children smile and feeling peace. Not the peace of ignorance, but the peace of hard-won wisdom, of knowing she did everything for her children, of knowing she survived. That's the real bloody Christmas. The quiet, determined survival that comes after. The choice to keep living, loving, trusting even when you've been given every reason not to. Subscribe for more stories that will touch your heart and keep you thinking long after the video ends. Drop a comment and tell us, what would you have done? How would you have handled discovering your partner's double life? Share your story. You're not alone. And remember, no matter how dark Christmas Eve gets, Christmas morning always comes. The light always returns. You just have to survive the night.